thank you all for joining us this afternoon for this special exclusive program for luncheon attendees, Pen to Screen, Writing and Telling Black History, a conversation with Julian Breece, screenwriter of the film Rustin. And the theme for African American History Month this year is African Americans in the Arts. And as we celebrate African Americans in the arts, we're bringing you this great conversation to discuss the role of African Americans in Hollywood. And so we're going to begin our marquee event today with a performance of Lift Every Voice and Sing, provided by the Morgan State University Choir. fantastic. And thank you again to the Morgan State University Choir for providing that fantastic rendition of Lift Every Voice and Sing. I will now introduce to you our fantastic moderator for today's discussion, Ms. Agnes Moss. Agnes Moss is the founder and president of the National Black Movie Association, a nonprofit 501c3 organization consisting of filmmakers, film stakeholders, and film enthusiasts who champion Black stories, advocate for diversity and inclusion in the film industry, and promote equity in film education. In her current role, Ms. Moss develops community programs, organizes resources, and facilitates professional development opportunities to empower Black filmmakers. Since 2019, Ms. Moss has led the organization in awarding scholarships to aspiring filmmakers and awards to community businesses and organizations providing film and entertainment programs. Ms. Moss has an extensive background in communications, journalism, education, and film that spans over 20 years. Before establishing the National Black Movie Association, Agnes's passion was producing television programs and segments for multicultural audiences. Agnes has been recognized by businesses, news outlets, and publications for creating the Real HBCU Challenge and hashtag National Black Movie Day. Agnes is a proud graduate of North Carolina Central University. Ms. Moss obtained a Master of Science degree from Trinity University. She is a resident of Washington, D.C., a member of the Links Incorporated and Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated. So please welcome Agnes Moss.
Thanks so much, Lopez, and thank you to Asala for having me today. Hello, everyone. I'm Agnes Moss, and I'm so happy to be here. Happy National Black Movie Day. Today is a day of celebrating and elevating Black films and filmmakers, so I'm so excited to be here. From screen to pen, writing and telling Black history is a much-needed conversation in our community. Rustin was not only President Barack Obama's top pick for 2023, but also one of mine. So I'm elated to hear from Rustin screenwriter Julian Breece. Before he's introduced, let me introduce you to today's special host who will interview Mr. Breece. Dr. Valerie Maholmes. Dr. Valerie Maholmes is an author, psychologist, whose work focuses on fostering hope and building resilience in children, families, and communities. Currently, she is employed at the National Institutes of Health. Prior to her time at NIH, she was a faculty member at the Yale University Child Study Center for 13 years, where she served in numerous capacities with the school development program, including Director of Research and Policy. In 1999, she was named the Irving B. Harris Assistant Professor of Child Psychiatry and endowed professorial chair for child development and social policy. In these capacities, she provided consultation at every level of education to the system and provided knowledge and application of principles of child development into educational research and practice. In addition, she supervised pre- and post-doctoral social work, psychology, and psychiatry trainees in the provision of clinical services in the schools. Dr. Maholmes is actively involved in her community and has served in leadership capacities on numerous committees and boards, including president of the Howard University Alumni Club of Greater Washington, D.C., president of the board of directors for the Arnold Giselle Institute of Human Development, Yale Child Study Center School, and the New Haven Public Education Fund. Most notably, Dr. Maholmes served 2 terms as a member of the New Haven Board of Education, where she was elected vice president, secretary, and appointed chair of the curriculum committee. In 2003, Dr. Maholmes was awarded the prestigious Executive Branch Science Policy Fellowship, sponsored by the Society for Research in Child Development and the American Association for the Advancement of Science. She is a sought-after speaker and has published numerous articles, manuscripts, and book chapters. Her books include Why Hope Still Matters, Fostering Resilience and Well-Being in Children and Families in Poverty, that was published by the Oxford University Press, and Post-Traumatic Relationship Syndrome, How to Find Your Drama-Free Zone. Our special guest for today is Julian Breece. Screenwriters are key to storytelling. And let me share some information about Mr. Breece. Julian Breece is an award-winning writer-director whose work crosses film and TV. Notably, Breece wrote the screenplay for the Netflix film Rustin about gay civil rights strategist Bayard Rustin and the 1963 March on Washington. He co-wrote the Emmy-nominated Netflix series When They See Us, and recently penned the screenplay for Fox Searchlight's forthcoming Alvin Ailey biopic, which will be helmed by Oscar winner Barry Jenkins. Breece is a consulting producer on Lee Daniels' Sammy Davis Jr. limited series at Hulu, and he served as a writer and producer on such critically acclaimed series as Amazon's Harlem and Hulu's The First. As you can see, we have two very special guests today. Welcome, Dr. Maholmes and Mr. Breece. It is a pleasure to have both of you this afternoon, and I'm excited to hear this discussion. I'll turn it over to you now, Dr. Maholmes.
Thank you, and thank you so much for that warm introduction, and welcome, Julian Breece. It's such an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to have this conversation with you, and this is what we want to do, and we encourage the audience as we're engaging in this conversation to please feel free to send your questions and comments. So first of all, it's just a privilege again to sit here with you and to have the opportunity to have this time to really talk between the lines and to hear more of your story. So you've been successful in a place and space where there are few people of African descent, namely Hollywood, in terms of the place and in terms of the script, in terms of the space, being a script writer for full-length films. Share with us a little bit about your journey, how you came to do this work, how you choose the films that you write, and what might be some takeaways for young people who might be watching you now and wanting to follow in your footsteps.
Well, first, thank you so much for that warm introduction, Agnes, and it is a pleasure to speak with you, Dr. Maholmes. I, been really looking forward to this conversation. How did I start out? I fell in love with movies when I was really young. Some of my earliest memories are going to the movie theater with my parents. I remember distinctly the film that really struck me the most when I was younger was E.T. The themes in that film, and it's one of those timeless films that still holds up, but just the power of the medium, how you're able to really affect people sensorially and bring people an emotional experience visually, sonically, and I think over the course of just growing with films and watching more, I realized that films, it's a medium that can actually affect social change. So I didn't know that I absolutely wanted to go into film until I was I would say in high school. But even after that, it was a journey. In college, I think I had thought about going into academia. I was writing short stories. It's like, maybe I want to be a novelist. But my senior year came around and I realized that I wanted to be in the film industry. It's just where my heart was. And I moved to Los Angeles for film school after that. Yeah.
And so how's that experience? What's the experience as an African-American film writer and script writer? What's the experience of being in Hollywood like for you?
I would say that, things have changed a lot since, I started out in the industry. I would say over the past 10 years, I actually started working on the script for Rustin 10 years ago. So, which is also, it's really indicative of how things can work out here in Hollywood. You can have a project that you're excited about, you work on it, and it may not get made for 10, 15 years, or, it may never get made. So, I would say that when I I was at the beginning of my career. Rustin was the first feature screenplay that I had gotten hired to write. So I had written, screenplays of my own, and I had won some awards and, gotten some recognition. Nothing that put money in my pocket or was putting food on the table or keeping the lights on. I still had temp jobs that I was doing at that time to, just with my other friends who were out here, just with a dream of actually making it into the industry. At that time in 2013, there were not many Black screenwriters in the system, meaning that, at that time, I would say you would have maybe like 5 Black screenwriters who were consistently getting work, even for projects that were starring Black people at that time. It was not likely that a Black person would be hired to write or direct those projects just 10 years ago. So, when my manager, he came to me and, he let me know that Dustin Lance Black, who had written Milk, he was developing a project about Rustin and he was looking for someone to write it. It's weird. Now thinking back on it, it was unlikely that I would get it, like I said, but I went after it like I would. It just felt like something that, had really come from, the heavens for me, because Bayard Rustin had meant a lot to me, even since I was a teenager. And I felt like I just had to be a part of the project. And so yeah, my manager and I went after it. I wrote a long email explaining my passion for the project, my respect for Mr. Rustin, and what I felt like the movie could be. And Lance responded to that. And we hit it off. And I started research immediately. I moved to New York for 3 months. And with the support of my loving parents, because I did not have the money to do it at that time, and did research, and I met with people who worked with Bayard and knew him personally, and did about 19 hours of in-person interviews, in addition to hitting the libraries in New York and the Rustin collection that's at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Wow, that's amazing. You said 3 or 4 key words that really stood out to me as you're kind of describing your journey. First of all, you talked about your dream of doing this work. You talked about passion, and you talked about respect for the artist. What advice do you have to young people who might have a dream and they might have a passion, but how do they bring that to fruition? I mean, you said this was 10 years before it actually came to fruition, and you had to do some other things to keep that dream and passion alive. What advice do you have for young people who really want to do this kind of work, but that 10-year horizon may seem kind of long for them, or maybe their passion might be simmering down a bit?
I would say that faith is everything. And, I think that's something that my brother and I definitely got from our parents, which is that anything is possible. You just have to put yourself in place for it, even if it doesn't seem like there's a path for it, which was certainly the case for a lot of us. The time that I moved out here, there weren't a ton of opportunities. We had to make them. I started out making a web series, and I had a short film that I did, my first short film. I sank money into that. Look, it ended up going to Sundance, but it's one of those things where it did not lead to industry doors opening immediately, because there just wasn't a lot of need they felt at that time for, I guess, Black creators, or a lot of Black images, or certain kinds of Black images. And yeah, the web series that I had was called Buppies, that I did with my producing partner, Aaliyah Williams, and it was starring Tatiana Ali. And it was really popular on the internet. And it was at the same time that Issa Rae had Awkward Black Girl, with Tracy Oliver, who was, wrote Girls Trip, a very good friend of mine. And we were just scrapping, you know, we were mainlining content to the viewers through social media, because that's, you know, and that's how our cohort grew an audience. We had to prove to the industry that there is an audience for images that they decided people, you know, didn't want to see. And I would say that of the people who I came up with, who, you know, started from the bottom with no path, I would say that the only ones that did not end up with a career where they're making money in the industry are the people who left. So I just tell people perseverance is everything. Just don't leave. You know, because more than talent in this industry, it's about you know, your fortitude, commitment to it, and you know, just doing the work. Like I said, even when there seems like there's no rewards coming, stick to it. Something will happen. It may not be what you envisioned, but if you love this industry, if you are creative, you'll find a place for yourself.
That's so inspiring because, you know, aside from having the long haul of having this project come to fruition, the other things come into place, but persistence and perseverance seems like those were the two kind of twin armors that you have in your arsenal to help you along. How do you inspire young people to hang in there? What kind of support system did you put in place to allow you to continue to keep pressing and keep your dream alive?
I would say that the most important thing is just finding a group of like-minded peers in the industry. More important than finding mentors is just finding other people who are, you know, at the same level as you in the industry, and you know, people who want to do the kinds of projects that you're working on, who are fighters, who are the ones that you know are not going to leave, and stick together, work on each other's projects, read each other's scripts, get information from each other. You know, if there are opportunities, one of the opportunities that was really, you know, important to my development was Film Independent, which is an organization in Los Angeles. They do a program called Project Involve for minorities who are interested in working in the film industry. So that is people of color, LGBTQ people, you know, and it gives amazing inroads, you get mentors in the program. So they'll give you like an industry mentor that, you know, works in your arena, the arena that you're interested in working with. You make a short film with, you know, the other people that get into the program. So if you've never been in a production, you get to be a part of a production. And, you know, they're making these films that are real. When I was doing it, it was, you know, we're making them on the cheap. Like now they're actually getting like, you know, the program has grown, and I mean, they're making incredible projects, and they're really, it's a training program, and it's free. You know, and so now I'm in a position to support that program that, you know, is providing for young people coming up. So just finding out about those like opportunities that are there and taking advantage of as many of them as you can. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely. And being able to turn around and give back to people who are now coming behind you seems to me to be key. I want to switch gears a bit now and just talk about Bayard Rustin. He is a force to be reckoned with, and just you know, I'm just enthralled with what you put on screen, and just his fortitude and stick-to-itiveness, and just the power of his determination. Tell us a little bit. You said you did research in New York. Tell us a little bit about Mr. Rustin. Who was he? And what aspects of his life did you have to choose to bring his story to life? And, you know, any other experiences that you might have had in meeting him and meeting with his team and family, or whomever you had to get together with to kind of bring that story to life?
Sure. Well, I mean, like I said, my journey with Bayard Rustin started very early. When I was a teenager, is when I learned about him. And, you know, like I say, unfortunately, I did not learn about him in school. You know, I was just, you know, I'm a millennial, so a child of the internet. And, you know, at the time I was, you know, a young, you know, teenager who was really coming to terms with the fact that as, you know, a Black gay man, that the gay part was going to stick. It wasn't just a phase. And so I was just looking for other signs of life, of like, you know, of other Black gay men who were out there and, you know, who were, had positive outcomes to their lives. And there's an author activist who's amazing, Keith Boykin, who was one of the few really visible Black gay bloggers at that time, and political activist online. And he would do he had a series where he would present, you know, Black queer histories. And he actually has one of his books focuses on that as well. And Bayard Rustin was one of those people. And I think the thing that I was taken by with Bayard was that, you know, this is a Black gay man who was openly gay, not just in the 60s, but also the 50s, 40s,
50s,
30s, who was really not just the right hand to the most, you know, the most, you know, celebrated religious leader in the modern era. It blew my mind that that was his mentor. You know, Martin Luther King was, he learned nonviolent resistance, you know, the thing that we, you know, most attribute to him, the philosophy we attribute to Martin Luther King, he learned from Bayard Rustin, an openly Black gay man. So just that image alone let me know that whatever limitations I was afraid of were not necessarily true or real. And, you know, I learned a lot more about him in college. I was a history and literature major in college, and, you know, he was a big, you know, a big part of the research that I did my sophomore year for my sophomore thesis. And yeah, so when this opportunity came around, I mean, I obviously learned so much more about him, but I felt ready for it. And, you know, like I said, the first thing I did at the time, you know, there was a documentary, which is fantastic, Brother Outsider. And there were a couple biographies, but the thing about writing biographical film is that you need personal details.
Yes.
You know, you can't just write something that feels like it's you know, giving a timeline. You know, you have to really be able to, you know, round out characters. Who are they as in their full humanity? And for Bayard, you know, the only way I felt like I could do that justice was to get information from the sources, the people who were not just in the room with him, but who knew him most intimately, that could give me an idea of what his instincts would be in certain situations, what his reactions might be to certain scenarios, so that not being in the room myself, I could, you know, approximate, you know, with the most, you know, respect, you know, who he would have been at that moment in his life that we are presenting through film. And yeah, I would say the person who I talked to who gave me the most information was his partner, his life partner, Walter Nagel, who was just fantastic. You know, he let me know who Bayard Rustin was when, you know, that door was closed at home, when he was, you know, what his fears were, what his vulnerabilities were. Because, you know, at the time, Bayard Rustin, I mean, I would read, things and hear things. Bayard, he's brave, obviously, courageous.
Clearly.
He is, someone who deeply believes in the, equality of all human beings, and that all human beings deserve the same degree of dignity and respect. He, kind. Everyone says he's, preternaturally kind, generous, loving, open-hearted. And I'm like, okay, but he's human, right? Right? You know what I mean? Like, but that's who he had to be in public. Who he was in private, he had anxieties, he had fears, he had self-doubts, a lot of them. And, I think that in this film, that was really important to portray, that even the people who we look up to the most, our leaders, are human too. And, which is the kind of thing, which is what someone like Bayard wants you to know, is that you can do it too. You can do the things that he did. You just have to, make the decision that you are worthy.
And that's such a powerful message. And there's such a delicate balance that you have to strike in creating and telling the story of balancing the humanity of Bayard Rustin with the work that he did. We often like to, characterize people and put them on pedestals without thinking about their humanity. And how do you strike that balance, the images that you had to use to portray the power of the emotion and everything that went into the work that he did? It's more than just kind of telling a story, but you were able to weave it all together and strike that balance.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's the biggest challenge when you're writing biographical film. It's because it's more than just like, oh, this is a person who was great, who, whose life story has to be told. It's really about like, what is the, what are the themes, and what is the meaning that you want an audience to take away from it, right? So that's what storytelling is, from, the earliest days of, fables and, our, mythologies, or the Bible. It's really like, what are we taking, what wisdom are we taking into our lives from the story? And, for me, I wanted it to be, I want the kind of wisdom that, Bayard not only lived, but would have said. So turning that into a movie. So it's starting there, and like, so where do we start? So the first thing, I would say I knew early on that the movie should center around the March on Washington, which, is his, most notable, his biggest achievement, huge undertaking. And, sometimes you get lucky with a biographical film. So for me, with the March on Washington, there's basically 2 months. He has 2 months to build this march that is going to help, push the civil rights, Kennedy's bill through Congress. And it's like, it has to happen now. That's the thing about being a strategist. It's all about timing. So it's great. I'm like, okay, this is mission impossible, right? So I kind of have like you have like a framework for what this is. There's a ticking clock. I would say the difficult thing within that is finding the emotional story, the personal story.
Yeah.
And so in this story, another reason I knew that it was definitely the march, is because it was really a convergence of relationships, themes, conflicts from throughout his career, which spanned decades in the movement. So you have his relationship with King, which was a very close relationship. These are very, very close friends. They have almost a father-son mentor. They have a mentor-mentee kind of relationship. His kids call Bayard Uncle Bayard. Bayard and Coretta are very close. Coretta Scott King is one of the early supporters of the LGBT movement. That relationship is fractured because at that time, the most important thing is the movement.
The movement.
We are at the precipice of Black equality. So one of the people who was there at the beginning of the fight had to be pushed out. So there's that relationship. There's just a relationship with Roy Wilkins and the NAACP, the young student organizations, CORE, SNCC, that he's had relationships with, who see him as, you know, a radical rebel who's gone soft. So, you know, you have all of those relationships that you bring into it. For Bayard, who was, you know, he was openly gay, but not like we know openly gay today, right? You know, with gay marriage and, you know, gay relationships, you know, being portrayed on, you know, in media. He didn't make his relationships so public. And even now, even when I was doing the research in 2013, speaking to the people who knew him at the time, even getting him to open up about the relationships that we do know about was difficult, because they still feel the fear that they felt then for him. They still hold that same kind of, the same kind of, emotion in them. So, I had to make them feel that they could trust me with that information, and that I was going to handle it with care. I've talked to all of them and they're happy with how the film turned out, which is great. But yes, so really learning like Bayard's relationship with Tom, who was in the film, but also his relationships with, Bayard had relationships with Black gay men that for the most part are undocumented. Because like I said, at the time, there was just no space for that. Like part of the civil rights movement was really, was us working hard to conform to white patriarchal norms and, respectability norms in order to show that we were worthy of being integrated into mainstream society. And so someone like Bayard had to be pushed to the margins as far as possible. And the men who he had relationships with or friendships with who were gay, most of them were, obviously closeted. So,
there's so much to unpack there in this story. You were entrusted with this precious gift of the life, the humanity of Bayard Rustin, all of his friendships and experiences, and then on the other hand, you have this passion to tell the story. So how do you have to get people to trust you, to open up, to give you this gift, and they have to trust that you're going to take this gift and present it to the world in a way that is precious and respectful. So how do you encourage young people when they have this kind of gift that's given to them, or they find a story that needs to be told? How do they tell it in a respectful way, recognizing that it is a gift on the one hand, but knowing, that it's something that needs to be shared with the world?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, that is up to every artist and their, whatever their artistic vision is, and, whatever their moral, ethical compass is, For me, there are things that I felt were, obviously I had the utmost respect for Bayard, and there are areas that, other people may have been more afraid to deal with because they feel like, oh, why are we airing dirty laundry? Why are, you know what I mean? And for me, it's like, well, I think what you consider dirty laundry isn't so dirty, To me, that's just being a human,
And choosing to tell aspects of the story that you think are important.
Yeah, like you can't, show like we don't live our lives every day in our best light. We're learning, we're growing, So, all of us, are going to falter. All of us are going to, like I said, we all have fears, weaknesses, insecurities. We all have things that, we have apologized for, or wish we had apologized for, will apologize for, you know, in the future.
If you keep breathing.
And I think that, you know, we learn through those, we become stronger and wiser through those experiences. And, you know, with Bayard in this film, you know, one of the things that, you know, he did you see in the beginning when they had told him, you know, that he had to walk away after Adam Clayton Powell had made this threat. They were like, we can't risk this. You know, we need you to separate yourself from the movement. And he walked away. And so where Bayard has to get by the end of the film is, I'm not walking away from this. I believe in this. I'm a part of this. I am worthy and deserving of being here. If you want me to go, then you have to force me out, fire me. I'm not going to walk away again. And, you know, I mean, that was part of his journey, getting there. In the beginning, he was afraid. He didn't feel worthy. He felt there was shame that he was feeling, you know, around the Pasadena incident, which the movie gets into. You know, even though he was open about being gay, it came less from what we know as gay pride or like our Black pride, right? It was more, it's just the truth. And if I believe in the truth, you know, in all things, that there should never be a denial of the truth. Anything that denies the truth is violence. Then I can't lie to people about my, you know, desire, how I love. And that is where it came from. He was principled in that way. But that didn't mean that he didn't bear the same kinds of wounds that those of us who are, you know, minorities in a dominant society where we're different for whatever reason, of feeling like outsiders or feeling like we don't fit, or at worst being denigrated and abused for it, which he experienced on multiple levels.
On multiple levels. Well, you know, I am just thinking about the word that you said, truth, and telling the truth, the power of the truth. And of course, we're living in a time now when we don't want to tell the truth about our history, when schools are having difficulty sharing the Black history curriculum, let alone telling stories about individuals like Mr. Rustin. What role would organizations like ASALH, our HBCUs, and other social justice organizations, what role should we be playing in making sure that these stories are captured and that they're told in a respectful and balanced way, in the way that you described your journey in telling Mr. Rustin's story?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the most important thing for, you know, for groups like ASALH and, you know, groups, you know, which I feel like ASALH is already doing the work, which is bringing information to our people, you know, continuing to do that, because you're right, we're at a time where the truth is being, you know, just completely warped, contorted, erased for really, you know, malignant political prerogatives that are, you know, that are a danger to all of us. They're even a danger to the people who think that they're, you know, protecting their power by doing this. I mean, you know, it's, again, because even, what is it? Not being true to yourself is the most dangerous thing that you can do. And, you know, I think that, you know, the more information that we can get out to people, I mean, that is what, you know, the student groups, you know, in, you know, the civil rights movement were doing. They were bringing information to people, even through protest, you know, sitting at those counters and forcing people. It's like, no, you're going to force me to leave this diner. You get that on camera and show it to people. It tells people the truth, right? You know what? These are humans, and there is something wrong with what's happening in this society. So I think it's all about truth. And right now we're in the almost exact same situation, or a very similar situation that we were in, in the 1950s and 60s. After Brown versus, Board of Education, we'd had some real wins and progress up until Brown versus Board of Education, which obviously desegregated public schools. But that was 1954. In 1955, you saw a sharp rise in racial violence. You saw a sharp rise, you saw a regression, right?
Yeah.
Where people that were afraid of change, they were, actively trying to ensure that things didn't go any further. So they were rolling back on truth. They were, rolling back on people's rights. It's interestingly, like there were more people by 1963. There were fewer integrated public schools than there were in 1955 and 56. So you saw like a regression. It went backwards. That's why the march was so important, and pushing that act through was so important, because it had to happen at that moment, and something needed to happen that wasn't just, it couldn't just be about the bill passing. It was about people are moved through symbols, and that's what the march was. The visual force of that moment changed people's hearts. That is what the movement knew, from the Birmingham campaigns, the freedom rides, like I said, the sit-ins, the visual force. And so now we just have to figure out what, in a social media era, how do we cut through the noise? And, really, how are we able to elicit that kind of, change in people's hearts? I call it the rescue of the human heart.
Oh my.
Through, visual force, through art. And I think it's going to come from, a generation of young people who are creating art and who are, social justice leaders who understand, from when they're children, how the new technologies work, how we're communicating. Yeah.
And I think, it's just what you were saying about rescuing people's hearts. I hope the audience that's listening, I hope there are lots of these key phrases and terms that you use. I hope these are wonderful takeaways for the audience. And as young people are moving to this field and thinking about stories that they want to tell, hopefully what they will keep in mind is that they want to rescue people's heart, maintain their humanity and integrity of the story that they're telling, so that we don't lose the heart of that story. We don't lose the essence of what the story is about, not just so much the telling of the story in and of itself. This has been a wonderful conversation. There's so much more that I want to say and I want to ask, and I'm going to invite Agnes back to join us. I don't know if there are questions from the audience, if Agnes has questions that she would like to ask at this point.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Maholmes. Such a great interview. And Julian, I appreciate your transparency.
Yes.
We do have a few questions. There are two that I have, and that is you spoke about Bayard's takeaway of not walking away. And I just wanted to know, is there anything that you learned personally during your journey as a screenwriter for Rustin?
Did I learn? I would say absolutely. I think that honestly, I was scared. So, it's my first, paid gig, on a film with a studio. So for me, I would say that the bravery, the deeper learning and understanding I had of Bayard's bravery, it made me feel even more courageous in some of the choices that I made. I mean, there were pushback on some of the choices that I made in the script, and the most important ones, luckily remained, but I think I packed enough in there where it was, even the things that were dropped, it's still like the core of, what I felt was important remained in the project, because I felt like truth was important. I felt like there was a narrative that I knew what the story would be if I didn't intervene, or I felt that way. And I feel like that's how all artists kind of feel, every piece of work comes from a point of view.
Yeah.
And, and I come to my work with really like, like I said, it's about rescue or liberation, just liberating people to see things differently, right? I'm not trying to tell you one way or the other anything, but just like, meeting people where they are and opening hopefully a new lens to look at situations. And writing this film made me even more confident in not just my ability to do that, but that is what I'm here to do.
Wow, that's great. For those who are new to a career in screenwriting, can you give a glimpse of, or maybe, some insight into your day-to-day of what that work entails? Maybe,
Day to day of spiraling into anxiety and banging your head on the wall and asking yourself why you chose this life. No, look, it's a real privilege to do the thing that you love doing, and that you feel passionate about. But I would say that screenwriting is, it's difficult, especially when you're starting a project, looking at a blank page, uh, thinking that you got it in your head, and then you start to write it down and it's not coming out the way that you uh, envisioned it. And again, it's that kind of the same faith that you have to have sticking, staying out here and persevering through whatever challenges you have externally in the industry. The internal struggle as an artist is, can be just as difficult. You kind of just have to have faith and keep pushing forward. And yeah, and the more passionate you are about a project, sometimes it can make it even harder. So I would say it gets easier in some ways, and in some ways it just is never easy. But yeah, for me, this is what I should be doing. I should be waking up at 7 a.m. every morning. I should, maybe go, for a run. I should be writing by 8 a.m. And I should be, breaking by noon. That never happens. So I keep my mornings as clear as possible. I try not to take any meetings until the afternoon. And if I can get 1 hour of writing done a day, that is a win, I've learned. But it's just about showing up every day, and not expecting, just whatever I get done that day is a win.
yes.
Yeah.
The first Oscar awarded to a Black film screenwriter was to Jordan Peele for Get Out in 2018. It was a long time from the first Oscars in 1929 to 2018. How do we help those of us who love film? How do we help the industry improve this record?
I actually think the first was um say George Fletcher, who wrote Precious, and that was 2010, I think. 2000, yeah, 2010 or 11. Same, ridiculous gap of time. I would say that I would say the focus on awards is become like, I think, really poisonous to I would say Black art in particular. I think that, the real thing that we need to be fighting for is getting more Black creatives in the system, creating a support system of, having more executives in the system, people who have buying power, who have decision-making power in the industry, more, honestly, like more Black creatives who are making art, independently, supporting Black independent film, putting money into, into those images, because ultimately, you know, like, I mean, like Lee Daniels, who did, you know, who directed Precious, that was an independent film. So Jeffrey Fletcher would not have had that moment if he was relying on the studios, you know, but luckily there were, you know, that financing came through, you know, I mean, Lee pulls together money like, you know, like nobody else. But a lot of like our favorite filmmakers, that's how they started out. That's how Jordan Peele started out, making content on his own, you know, and it ended up getting him a TV show. So I think that the idea of us being validated externally by institutions where we feel shut out, or being the first, you know, those are nice, but what are they really getting for us at the end of the day? I mean, like, more Black artists who want to win Oscars. I don't know if we need that, you know, like, I think we need disruptors. And we need people who are serious about, you know, the work, and about presenting Black images that are going to help, you know, show the diversity of Blackness, you know, to show Black people that we are not limited to, you know, the images that we're seeing in media, that our image, our abilities, our desires, our hopes, dreams are limitless. There's no, you know, one way to be anything. And I mean, the thing that thing is what has made us powerful. And you want to see that through film. So, you know, you don't always want to see I think we get, you know, with awards, it's like, oh, how can I tell the most depressing Black story? You know, traumatize people into, you know, almost feeling like Blackness is something that is, you know, there's so many pathologies involved that need to be, that the dominant society feels like they can solve with like awards. It's like, oh, show us that pain. We like to see that. You know, I think it becomes a bit of a perverse objective. You know, that's why seeing films, you know, like, well, I think, you know, with Rustin, I think that, you know, when I was writing it, I didn't want to tell another, you know, no offense, sort of very sad, you know, struggling civil rights film, you know, where, you know, we're just singing sad, you know, hymns and spirituals, you know, which are all important part of our history. But the reality is that within Resistance, there was joy. Those spirituals, there was joy when they were being sung. You know, there was energy there. You know, so I think that, you know, to answer your question, I guess I would say that awards will come when we stop focusing on awards. Even though Coleman Domingo is nominated for an Oscar, which we were all very excited about, and which is actually one of the things when I was writing the script, I was like, the person whoever takes on this role could win an Oscar. And that excited me, not because of the accolade. Like, I didn't think about my Oscar or the film's Oscar. It was just having Bayard Rustin, you know, having his, I would say having his name known in that way, seen in that way by more people are going to know about him. If that, you know, if Coleman, if, you know, the actor who plays that role gets it, it would, you know, just elevate him even more. And I was like, that is in our industry, that kind of elevation is, you know, one of the, you know, the highest levels of like recognition that we can give to a biographical subject. And just the nomination felt like a huge full circle, and a win for the film, but really a win for Mr. Rustin.
Such valuable information and empowering words. Dr. Maholmes, if you have anything to add before we close out.
I am, again, just honored to be in your presence and to hear your story. And thank you. I just want to say thank you for your dream, your passion, your persistence, your perseverance, and your respect all the things that you talked about in your discussion with us today, and for giving us this wonderful story. And I'm hoping that as young people are watching, that they will be taking away these nuggets and these jewels from your journey, and hopefully you will look back one day and people will be telling your story. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Maholmes, and for everything that you do for our community, and also just to everyone at Asala. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you. I'll turn it back over to you, Lopez.
All right. Well, thank you all for this great conversation, and thank you everyone who has attended. It was very riveting, and I tell you, I was sitting here fascinated, and I wasn't ready for it to end, but all good things must come to an end. And so thank you all for attending. Before we go, I just want to thank our 2024 sponsors for Asala. As you see on our screen, we could not have such great programming. We couldn't have our Black History Month Festival. We couldn't have our Black History Month Luncheon, which is returning next Saturday, without the support of these great organizations who came forward and supported the study of Black history. And so thank you all for joining us, and have a great day.